I'll also use this chance to introduce my team. We have DK, our Director of Community Engagement, Michael Horowitz, who is our Public Programming Coordinator, Caio Carneiro, our Engagement Coordinator of Northern Manhattan Parks, and the one and only Nigel Ransom, our Seasonal Community Garden Engagement Coordinator. Thank you so much for joining us on our last installment of Gardenism, with my topic this evening, Methods of the Traditional Farmer. I was really excited actually to choose this topic because of how much it means to me in my relationship to the land. This evening we'll be learning how our native ancestors used these systems to indicate when specific cycles of nature would occur. So some of the things that we're going to go over today include practices and lore of the original land stewards, these nature cycles that I've just mentioned. We'll also cover traditional farming methods, preparation for these changing seasons that we have coming up ahead, and some tools and resources that you can use. So who are the original land stewards that I'm referring to this evening? I'm going to specifically be focusing on the practices of the Algonquin, who are a diverse group of tribes that share a common language and thus shared stories. The Algonquin reside on Turtle Island, sometimes referred to as North America. These tribes span geographically from the Atlantic to the Great Lakes. And we're going to use the next hour to learn more about this family of peoples who are connected by this shared language, by the shared cultural traditions and the stories of the land. The individuals who make up this linguistic family tree are referred to as the Algonquin, a little bit different. So the several tribes that are tied together by the shared language identify as the Anishinaabe. The Anishinaabe, whose name translates to the original people. They're known best for their cultural traditions surrounding farming, fishing, and hunting. So this open conversation is going to talk about the indigenous stewards of the land, how their stories and their practices have laid this foundation of traditional farming methods that we use today, that growers know very well here on Turtle Island. Next slide, please. Okay. I'll start us off with a quote. This quote reads, "We are all looking at the full moon together, maybe at different times and in different place, but we're all together." This was said by Jaya Eagle Heart Opella. She is a medicine woman and spiritual leader of the Oklevueha Native American Church in Ashland, Oregon. So she was quoted in response to the Native American belief that as people, we represent and are a part of a great family or a great collective, and that we are physically and metaphorically linked to nature and to the land, to the animals, to the planets, to the plants, to the sky and the stars. I think it's important that we acknowledge that this belief that Jaya is putting forward may not apply for everyone, especially not for everyone here. It's a choice to consider yourself as part of something greater, as an essential part of this greater collective. So I chose this quote this evening to start our discussion because of this concept of connectedness. When we grow with the season and we learn with the land, that's a choice that we want to be a part of. And we'll be discussing the collaborative farming methods that were used by the original land stewards that they used to build and grow their communities. Next slide, please. So again, as a reminder, I'm going to be focusing on the Anishinaabe when I refer to the original land stewards. So this group resided in the northeast part of Turtle Island. As a gardener, Garden Mel, I also reside in the northeast part of this landmass. So I find that I commit myself to some of the same practices in this generalized zone in which I grow in. This zone, which sometimes as farmers and gardeners, we recognize, and it's called the hardiness zones, that reflects the area in which there is a minimum temperature for growing in. Sometimes if you get seed packets and you turn them backwards, you'll see that there is a certain hardiness and a certain time of year that they recommend putting those seeds either in the ground directly and sowing them that way or transplanting them. But the creation of the hardiness zone is a more modern Western agricultural practice. We used it at the height of the agrarian boom to maximize the success of growing our crops. The Anishinaabe did not use grow zones. They instead used what's called traditional ecological knowledge, TEK. Um, they used TEK to examine and learn from nature's cycles. This is sometimes also called indigenous knowledge or native science. And this information was taught and passed down from the elders to the youth to instill this sense of interconnection between living beings in the natural world. And this had a strong emphasis on forming relationships that were more place-based. So for my first question of the evening, please feel free to put in the chat, what are some examples of your own place-based relationships? And let's also take a second to understand this concept of a place-based relationship. My personal definition of a place-based relationship, I form place-based relationships in many of the places that I go to every day. They are connections that we have formed with locations. I have a place-based relationship with my personal garden that I help coordinate. I have a place-based relationship with Brooklyn, New York. I have a place-based relationship with the farms that I visit and help steward at. So it's possible to have multiple place-based relationships, and that each one is special and sacred and unique. I just want to take a second also to see if anyone else had some place-based relationships. Rena says community compost and garden collective in Western Queens. Oh my gosh. Plus the street trees. Can't forget the street trees. Each one of them is our own connection. What are some examples of place-based relationships? Location, garden, home, borough. Cherie says, I have a place-based relationship with the street trees in front of our building. Honestly, yes, I think everyone should just go ahead, step outside, and form a relationship with the street tree right in front of your home. Does your tree have a name? Do you take a look and say hi to it every morning when you leave to go to work? Isaiah says, I really like the East River Walkway on the Lower East Side. Yes, beautiful. Lots of memories growing up around there. Oh, and some great water. Let's not forget, water is also a location. You can completely form a location with the water, a relationship with it. Sheree, no, but I do give her a look every day. Oh, we got a tree who's a looker. I love that. Thank you so much for these answers. What we'll do now is we'll go ahead and we'll actually check some examples of these place-based relationships that some of the land stewards have had with the land. Next slide, please. Okay. So we have sharing stories in the soil, but what is the purpose of storytelling? The Anishinaabe use their stories to explain the natural phenomena in a very culturally relevant and unique way. When we are able to examine the sky, the land, the water, and we're able to recognize patterns, we're able to then understand how close we can come with these different parts of nature. This is an example of traditional ecological knowledge. Indigenous knowledge or native science is acquired by indigenous people over hundreds, even thousands of years through direct contact with the environment. This information is then handed down through generations and is used in ways to sustain life on the land. So the stories explain how we're connected to places and parts of nature. And then the native people then use TKE to study the patterns, those patterns we talked about, the patterns that the moon has, that the sun has, that the tides have. All of these patterns help them to be self-sustaining. All of these patterns help us to be able to work with nature. So let's take a look at some of the stories. Some of my favorite stories also. So 13 full moons. You might be thinking, aren't there 12 months in a year? What's up with the extra moon? Why did you bring that up? Well, sometimes there's 12 and sometimes there's 13 actually. Our lunar cycle is shorter than our solar cycle. So about approximately every 2.5 years, we're going to get an additional full moon, or like two in a month. We had so over the summertime. You might know this as the blue moon, that special moon, that elusive blue moon. Um, each moon is named after a corresponding act of nature of which it's represents. So the names let the original land stewards know when either certain weather would occur, like the full snow moon of February or the full cold moon of December. It also would let them know when to hunt, like hunting fish for the full sturgeon moon of August. It let them know the tracking patterns of animals and also when they developed, like the full buck moon of July. And it also let them know when food was ready to be harvested, such as the strawberry moon of June or the full corn moon of September, which just passed. Um, Also want to discuss the story of the three sisters. Does anyone know, since we have some growers in here, does anyone know the story of the three sisters? Hmm, I'm wondering, DK, might you know the story of the three sisters?
I do know the story of the three sisters.
Oh
I
my
want to
gosh,
hear what our audience has to say about the story of the three sisters.
good idea.
The
Thank you,
three
DK.
sisters involve three key elements that not only have we been using for well over a millennia because it works, but we've been using them because it works. So the key elements will frame for you, involve corn, beans, and squash. Shout out in the chat. What is the story? If you know, or even just take a guess. What do y'all think in the chat is the story of the three sisters involving corn, beans, and squash?
Thank you, DK.
You're
And I'll
right.
give you a hint too. These three sisters help each other.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. So it's going to be a learning lesson for a few people. We like learning together. So that's
I
great.
love learning. I
And
absolutely
learning.
love learning.
And we like story sharing, right?
Hmm.
Okay, Mel, hit everybody. What's the story?
So we have the story of the three sisters, which was used as a way of teaching people how to companion plant. Feel free to raise your hand if you know what companion planting is. So companion plants are plants that help each other with the growing process. This can either be help structurally, this can be helped nutritionally, and this can be helped with access to things like the sun and water. So we have three sisters. They're represented by corn, beans, and squash. So we have the tallest sister, the oldest sister, corn. Corn grows straight up to the sky and it provides a trellis, a natural trellis for their second sister, the bean, to grow their vines upon. Now, the bean, as we know, is a very viney plant. In this case, it grows up the corn because the corn provides it with that structure, that trellising to help it be able to reach sunlight, while the beans are also able to put much needed nitrogen into the soil. This nitrogen fertilizes not only the corn, but our third sister, the squash. The squash is the shortest sister down to the ground, and it's a large plant with lots of leaves. This squash plant also acts as like a living mulch to be able to protect the soil and to preserve the water that's in the soil. And it also keeps the pests away because we may know this, but squash has really, really prickly vines. The prickly vines are what keep away some of the bugs that would normally try to climb up and get in the way of growing the other plants. But these three sisters come together, corn, bean, and squash, to structurally help each other with the growing process.
Everyone, as a team, we believe that we are all facilitators in the space. Mel, I want to uplift that our co facilitator in the chat, Niles, uplifted of the three sisters, their grandmother gave them the responsibilities to uplift each other. That is the most beautiful thing I've heard today.
Seriously, that is so gorgeous. Wow.
I'd also like to take a moment to uplift a time check of 5:55. Please
Thank you so
continue.
much. All right. And now we're going to go on to our last story, which is the tale of the sun and the moon. So the sun and the moon is a Lakota story of two lovers, the sun called Wee, the moon called Hanwi. When they're separated, Hanwi covers her face to bring her husband close by. And then, as he leaves, she reveals her face in the full moon to bring him back. So this is a story of separation and reuniting. And this story is said to be the impetus for the moon changing phases and its presence in the night sky. So this is a testament to love between the sun and the moon. So beautiful. Next slide, please. The moon. So we have an idea of just how large the role that the sun has in our green spaces, but let's take some time to focus more on the role of the moon. I believe one of the greatest aspects of the moon is how we can use it to grow more traditionally, and understanding its phases helps us to be able to use the moon as a calendar for growing food. So if anyone's here has heard about the term waxing or waning moon, I'll let you know my little tip for remembering the directions of the waxing and waning moon. I just think of Mr. Miyagi, how he goes wax on, wax off, starting with the right hand, wax on. The moon's fullness on the right side refers to a waxing moon, and the moon's decreasing fullness on the left side refers to the waning moon. So the waxing moon has increasing illumination and is the best time to grow crops that grow above ground. The opposite, the waning moon, is the moon's cycle of decreasing light. That's actually the best time to weed, prune, and harvest those crops that need longer term storage. And now we have the full moon at its peak illumination, which we know is the best time to harvest abundantly. But what does it mean to harvest abundantly? And what does it mean to connect to what the indigenous growers refer to as the harvest moon? Let's go to the next slide and take a look at the harvest moon. Also, I invite you to observe this beautiful graphic, as well as joining me in a collective sip of water. All right, continuing on. So here we have a graphic of the moon's alignment. Each year, the full moon lights up the night sky during this time of annual harvest. So what does this mean for us as growers, and why does this happen? This is what scientists call the harvest moon effect. It's a period of time around the autumnal equinox. This year is October 6th, mark your calendars. At this time, the moon will rise at nearly the same time each night for 5 consecutive evenings, providing extended bright moonlight from dusk till dawn. So as the moon follows its path around the earth, it does so in an elliptical shape, not a perfect circle. And what does that mean? This makes the angle that the moon has with the horizon even smaller. The higher you are geographically in altitude, that means this phenomenon is going to be even stronger. You might even see the moon as early as 10 minutes right after sunset. So what does this mean? This results in longer hours of moonlight lighting up the sky. And for farmers, this means an extended workday and more time to be able to harvest crops from day into night. The original people followed this method to keep harvesting into the late hours of the night. Now, I'm going to take a second to recognize that not everyone in this chat works on a farm. Not everyone in this chat has access to land, works in a garden, and things similar to that. But I did want to show you how in our modern day, our scientific explanation is linked to a practice that indigenous growers have been using for thousands of years already. Because the moon is not just experienced on farms. It's vast. We use it as a tool for agriculture, for timekeeping. We even use it for navigation. To this day, fishermen are using the moon to map their routes on the open seas. Coral waits for the changing tides of the full moon to release their spawn. Um, Animals such as turtles rely on the moon to begin their return to their ancestral breeding grounds. Nocturnal animals like bats use the moon's light on their nighttime flights, and then in turn, they serve as nocturnal pollinators. So, whether we acknowledge this as a growing practice in our modern green spaces, this is exactly what the moon has provided and continues to provide us. Next slide, please. Okay, so these illustrations, I chose these to show how growers, artists, community members all correlate art and nature. These are Impressionist pieces, and these Impressionist artists captured a depiction of the moon and its relationships with the land stewards and the land in a very unique way. So these ones I picked because they focus on capturing the impression and feeling of this natural scene. Please, for those, feel free to throw in the chat. What are some impressions that you form looking at these pieces? For myself, when I take a look at this, I see that the moon is the largest, brightest object of the piece. It's the central focus for illuminating the subject of this painting, which is the land, which is the farmers. When I see artwork of the night sky like this, I imagine that I'm alive in the 19th century before the iPhone 17 was invented, and that my eye is the greatest camera at this time. I also consider the moon as this massive bright presence in the sky. It's not just a literal illumination of art and nature. This is in itself a form of story sharing. Next slide, please. All right, so I've talked a lot about the moon, and you're probably thinking, like, what does this have to do with what we're doing in our gardens today and on the land? So far we've reviewed the sun and the moon and how they are still guides and indicators to let us know when to accomplish certain tasks on the land. And it's time now to introduce the ways that we've accomplished this by using traditional growing techniques in modern and even urban settings. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm presenting to you on these next two slides some key takeaways from the modern farmer that has established their practice and still honors the methods of the indigenous land stewards, while also focusing on the needs of our people and our society and where we are today. So I'm bringing you a checklist which is observant of the traditional methods, but also holding space for things like food production and, of course, much needed rest. Starting here with growing seasonally. So we learned these indigenous methods of moon tracking as a traditional practice. And it's important because it tells us when things are in season. So according to what is seasonally relevant, like the strawberries and the corn that I mentioned. We have companion planting. If you remember, we just talked about the three sisters. So when we grow crop plants, this is where we see the presence of companion plants or plants that help each other. Companion plants can help each other from structural support, like with corn bean squash, or even with pest control. One of my favorite facts is that marigold repels pests like squash bugs, aphids, mosquitoes, nasturtium. Nasturtium actually is a magnet plant and it attracts ants away from the other crops. So this is also referred to as a sacrificial plant. And then next we have harvest, specifically harvesting at peak. So as we get through the hottest months of summer and we're kind of like getting past it now, this has pushed the crops to their utmost potential. We have moments where we're getting large produce, very colorful produce, flavorful produce. That's at its peak for harvesting. Next slide, please.
Mel, you've got a pretty robust chat going on. And
Oh,
when you said
apologies.
that marigolds repel mosquitoes, do you know what else repels mosquitoes? A topic that's a favorite of you and me is bats. So Rena says that they didn't realize that bats were also pollinators, right? So we're getting some amazing facts here in the chat. And then Cherie, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Cherie. Feel free to unmute if I'm not. Cherie shared with us and reminded me, I loved reading this comment, that they love how in your previous slide, how they're all harvesting hay and wheat. And it's just so calming for me. And then I want to shout out that Armani, thank you for sharing this beautiful statement, Armani. Armani says, I think it's beautiful that in a time of limited communication, we all kind of did the same things when it came to the land. I love, Armani, that you said that because it's a very unspoken herd. It's a very, it's giving, we are in tune. So thank you everyone for shouting out everything in the chat. Cherie comes back and says basil next to tomatoes. That, okay, okay, I like it. And you know what, Cherie? When Mel talks about companion planting, it's important to remember that if most times, if it works well in the garden bed, it's also gonna work on the plate. So perhaps you've had basil and tomato. Perhaps you've had, cilantro with parsley. Perhaps you've had rosemary, oregano, and thyme. So these are ways that we see companion planting on the land, in the garden, and in the plate. Mel, you're getting a lot of love, and everybody's excited to talk about bats. I think we might have to do a virtual on bats.
I
Mel, we
think
at
great.
6:05.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for chiming in. That was really beautiful. Um, yes. Uh, so next slide, please, Naja. Thank you. Um, last three steps. We have processing, seed saving, and finally, rest. So when we process our abundance at peak, it's going to ensure the highest quality crops. These will be the fruits that are preserved to last us through the less plentiful times, like the winter. We'll dry the beans to store. We braid and we cure our garlic to last all year. And that's when we turn our elderberries into syrup to banish the winter cold and illness. Seed saving. It's best to save seeds at the end of a growing season. Plants that are harvested after peak are grown for their seed production, ensuring strong, healthy crops for the next cycle. Seeds should be stored in cool, dry, and dark locations so they remain viable, so they don't get moldy or go bad. But seeds actually will last you a long time, a couple of years if they're stored properly. And finally, rest. So rest is very, very important. When we put the land and ourselves to rest, we're using this time to retreat indoors during the cold. We use this time to replenish ourselves, to consume what has been preserved, to build energy, and also gain insight for when it's time to return the land. Next slide, please. Okay, this is an example of one of our NYRP gardens, also my garden, Cooper Street Garden in Bushwick. Nija, feel free, you could play the video of me in the garden. This is me in the garden. Let me know if you can still hear me and I'll keep talking. Awesome. So this is a glimpse into what myself and in the second video, what my co-coordinator, Brittany, are doing to prepare in our garden currently. So in Brooklyn, we are growing in what I refer to as a climate bubble. And this can look very different depending on where you are in the city, but it could look very different even an hour upstate on the land. Over here, you could see that I am cutting down some of the mullein, which is just now exiting their seeding stage. I actually did this specifically during the waning moon cycle because that's the time you're supposed to prune off parts of the plants. And then Brittany can be seen in that video harvesting by the light of the moon and also a flashlight because the light of the moon, it just doesn't hit kind of like the same way that it used to now in the city. But we were using this time to harvest some of our leafy greens like the kales and the collards and the chards, which are loving this amount of sunlight and then the cooler temperatures that we're getting. I'm sure some of you might be seeing your collards popping off right now. So cooler weeks of early September, that's when we're thriving, that's when we're harvesting, and we can enjoy things later. Next slide, please. Okay, I wanted you to I wanted to invite you into my world, and which is getting to be a part of all of the beautiful NYRP gardens and the work that they're doing this season and every season. They are actually putting into effect the gardener's checklist here. So I wanted to show you some of the things that actually, I think it's one back, Nisha. Yeah, yeah. One more back. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so starting from left to right, we can see a beautiful cucumber harvest happening over at Willis Ave Community Garden. We see a beautiful uh, a harvest of leafy greens from the summer at Paradise Community Garden. And we also see 50 cents berries, beautifully ripe and ready for pick. And honestly, these garden groups are just doing so wonderful, growing beautifully, adding compost, making sure that they get the beautiful fruits of their labor. On to the next slide, please. And then they're taking this time to then preserve and process these fruits. So, example over here, we have one of the herbal honey infusions that were done at Cooper Street Garden. Preservation is actually one of my favorite aspects of the traditional farming method. And I love preserving and processing things. So we dry things like herbs for tea, medicine, and feel-good items like this infused honey. Something like this would bring warmth and comfort, and even memories of the summer that you can still enjoy in the cold winter time. In the middle, we can see an end of season pickling project over at Rhodabeck. So we pickle vegetables at their peak also so that we can nourish our bodies with this quality produce at times when this quality produce is just not readily available. And it allows us to sustainably enjoy certain foods just when they can't be anymore. Also, a beautiful harvest of some native corn and a gorgeous garlic braid done by our Urbeck team. Next slide, please.
Mel, we've got a question in the chat.
Oh, yes.
Why do you love preserving and processing?
Thank you for asking that. I honestly could go on and on, but I'll keep it brief. I love to process and preserve the things that I grow because, for the most part, when I'm in the garden, my mind goes to many different places. I could start 20 different tasks and then figure out, oh my gosh, how am I going to end this? But when it comes down to sitting down with the material and doing the process, the work, the handwork, the stuff that makes your mind just go quiet and you can really get to connect with it, that's my favorite part of it. It's also why I really like to harvest herbs and use herbs for my herbal work because it's a beautiful process of slowing down, calming the mind, and then your hands just smell really, really great afterwards. So that's my reason why I enjoy it.
I
Thank
love
you for
that.
asking.
It's also great, everyone, to preserve and process. One, because when we preserve the food, this gift of food and herb and flower that the land has so generously and so graciously give us, guess what? For me, it helps with my food bill. If I process my collards, my kale, my herbs, and then freeze them, now I can enjoy nature's bounty during the winter months when these things may not be growing on the land. It's also important to know that we process because we want to put the land to bed. It's almost time for the land to go to sleep and to have a healthy, restorative sleep that not only helps the environment, but the soil. It's very important that we clean out the beds, that we very intentionally process the yard waste or the environmental, elements that we'll use for compost, that we clean the gardens, we clean our sheds, because when the land deserves a peaceful sleep and rest after working so hard. Two, we want to process because we want organic material to break down and keep giving back to the land. But in New York City, in particularly, we want to clear our beds and outdoor spaces to be free of debris so that we're not feeding into the endless cycle of rats and undesirable vermin. So those are just a few reasons why we preserve, because it cuts down on our food bill. So many wonderful things that Mel shared. We also want to share what we've preserved. And we want to process because we want to give the land a chance to restore after an amazing season. Preserve collards. So harvest collards and kale now. Make sure they are completely dry. I don't mean like dried out. I just mean take a paper towel, make sure that there's no moisture there. Chop them up. I like to put them in a double Ziploc bag. I write the name kale. I write where I got them from, New Roots Community Farm. I write the date that I harvested them, and then I put them in my freezer. And I personally, for me, the volume of my family, I don't usually keep things for more than like 3 to 6 months in my freezer. But if you store them properly, and again, make sure that they're dry, you don't want anything molding up, right? Please don't ever put glass in the freezer. I like to use the Ziploc bags, get the actual freezer bags. You can do this with fruit. When I preserve herbs, sometimes I will put them in my herb dedicated ice trays, and I can just put water in there like I'm making ice. I can also put oil in there. I can also portion them out, and like ginger, I'll cut it up and have, little dollops. I'll put them on a tray and freeze that first. And once the ginger has frozen or the garlic, then I put those. So I measure them now. So there's so many ways that you can freeze, and you can preserve. Back to you, Mel.
Thank you so much, DK. And thank you everyone for your awesome questions. I honestly wish we could just sit here and talk about this forever. But I'll continue. So over here, we have a couple of examples of seed saving as well as cover cropping. So why do we save seeds? Uh, Through yearly seed saving, we aim to connect with other land stewards through things like seed swapping. In fact, National Seed Swapping Day is the last Saturday in January, so add it to your calendar now. It's intended to keep us growers, us farmers and gardeners connected during the non-growing season. So swapping seeds also allows for knowledge sharing. It preserves these heirloom varieties, and it also shares the seeds' stories and promotes this oral history. For cover cropping, we cover crop to protect and improve the soil. We accomplish so much for the soil through cover cropping by working to prevent erosion, by suppressing weeds. We increase organic matter in the ground. We enhance the soil's fertility and physical structure. And cover crops just act as like a living blanket to guard the soil from things like wind and water erosion. And then their roots that grow down into the soil hold the soil together while also promoting things like water filtration and water retention. So ultimately, the after a very heavy growing season, it's important to do things like cover crop to put those nutrients back into the ground and also provide all of the structural help by having things growing in there in winter. Um, so they'll add nutrients, especially things like nitrogen, corn, bean, squash, when beans are used. So over here, we can see a couple examples of seed saving done at Eastchester. We can see when our wonderful herb bag team came and visited schools and did a cover crop tutorial. In the middle, I also did a cover crop tutorial with our friends over at Paradise. And Nija, if you could please play this last video. I want to see if people can guess what seed is being saved here. Take a look at the shape. Take a look at what the inside of the sheet of the seed looks like. Look at how many seeds. What do you see at the top? So, do we have, first of all, before I go and answer that, do we have anybody here who wants to take a shot and guess what seeds this is? It's something that I am very much so trying to save this season and put into the ground for next season to promote my pollinators. Oh, well, we got a couple of answers here. Let's see. It's hard to see, but maybe. Maybe. Nigel, could you play it one last time for the folks at home?
Oh
See
snap!
the
Oh snap!
positive it
So
was?
so many guesses.
All right. And the answer is milkweed. Yes. Thank
Yay!
you, Sheena. Thank you, Rena. Thank you, Isaiah.
These
This
are
is
all good
milkweed.
guesses, though.
I know. I was like, wait, could that have been a pepper?
I
Am I
know.
mistaken?
And then we also got to guess milky oats. I can see how you got that.
Me too.
Yeah,
Honestly, from the structure of it. Yeah, I love Milky Oats. Oh, that was a great
yeah,
guess.
that is a good guess.
All
Mel, we
right.
are at 620.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you everyone who guessed it. That is indeed milkweed. Make sure that you save your seeds for next season so that we can bring those pollinators. Next slide, please. Okay. So I do have here a couple of resources, some of the things that I use and I looked into when I was putting together this presentation. And I do recommend that you take a look at these resources, including, but definitely at the top of my list is the Old Farmer's Almanac. Old Farmer's Almanac, you can get a printed version of it. There's one released every year. Farmer's Almanac also has a wonderful Instagram page that has wonderful opportunities for learning, sharing, lots of tidbits, lots of tricks and tips. So I highly recommend that you check out the Old Farmer's Almanac. Another one that I included here is the of cabbages in Kings County. This one especially was helpful for me for my research because I do reside in Brooklyn. So it was awesome to be able to see how the agrarian boom went and changed the whole structure of Brooklyn. It was all farmland up until about the 19th century. So highly check that out. And then this is a stream from Al Jazeera. What can indigenous traditional knowledge teach us? I absolutely loved watching this. It's not too long of a watch, it's a short watch, and it's really great to be able to hear it from the indigenous people themselves, how they are using native science in their words to make sure that they stay connected to the land in these modern times. And before we wrap up this evening, I wanted to actually cycle because moon cycles, but cycle back on this quote that we started with and opened with by Jaya Eagleheart Opella. So I'm going to read it over to you again. And I would really love if you would like to sound off in the comments your answer. The quote is, "We're all looking at the full moon together, maybe at different times and in different place, but we are all together." So I invite you all to re-examine this quote now at the end of our meeting. And I want to ask you, does this quote still mean what it meant to you at the beginning of this discussion? For me, at the end of all of this, I find myself more connected to you, some of you who I know, some of you who are strangers, than ever before. This was my first time doing a knowledge share like this, and you all connected with me to help me give you this knowledge that we shared in this moment, in this place, in this time. So I want to know from you, how are you connected now in this place and time? How do you connect yourself and each other to the work that you're doing in your growing spaces? Yeah, I just love to take this opportunity to connect with you now. So I'm going to jump into the chat and just enjoy it with you. Oh,
Now, one more time for everybody, the author of the quote, please, and then we're going to shout out what everybody's saying in the chat. One more time, Mel, the author of the quote, please.
the author of the quote is Jaya Eagle Heart Opella.
Armani says, this quote is so beautiful and it resonates so hard, especially with everything going on in this world. We need to remember we are all just humans under the same moon. Fish says, wow, this was a beautiful, generative knowledge share. Thank you. Thank you, Fish. And thank you for returning and supporting us with this Gardenism series. Isaiah shouts out, I'm just thinking about millions of people across the world doing the same thing at the same time. But we're all just little dots following the moon. Rena says, this makes me feel connected to all people, past and future, under the moon. Hey, Jude. Jude says, you can't enjoy the moon from inside. You must come out to the world and engage.
Wow, Jude, you really dropped the bar there. That was hot.
I feel like if we took all of these together, we could like write a song with the
Sheesh.
that would be awesome.
Right? Oh,
Everyone, we do want to uplift that the Old Farmer's Almanac is a tremendous resource. You can sign up for their newsletter for free. You can get daily emails from them. You can get weekly emails for them. And sometimes, occasionally, they will actually send you like little leaflets in the mail that range beyond, gardening in the garden. They talk about herbalism, they talk about canning and preserving. They talk about a whole host of things, and they certainly help me and Mel and our team keep track of moon cycles. We are so very appreciative of the love you have shared with us for this inaugural 5-part Gardenism series, where we have talked about holistic health and well being. We have talked about how to mobilize gardens as climate hubs. We've talked about how to make our gardens tech savvy. We've talked about using our gardens for programming to inspire and motivate activism and change. And our closer, Big Money Mel, came through to talk to us about traditional farming methods and very specifically connections and ties to the moon. Before I turn it over to Big Money to close this out, I want to thank everyone on behalf of NYRP and Engagement in Programming. This session was recorded, and we will be featuring this session along with some other of our sessions in October on our website at nyrp.org.
thank you. I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here with me this evening and for joining us on our Gardenism series. It's been absolutely amazing to be able to connect with you all in this virtual space and to be able to provide a moment of sharing, knowledge, connection, story sharing that we all of us are incredibly equipped to do so because we bring so much to the table in terms of learning and sharing. So I thank you so much for being a part of this, for taking this pathway to connection in the garden with us and with each other. Again, keep us on your calendars because we're going to be coming real soon with more opportunities to learn virtually. And you're amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Round of applause for everybody.